My own son was cracked open my safe at midnight when I was away from home. I'm Henry Caldwell, and for 3 months, my family had been demanding access to my life savings. They called me selfish for protecting $530,000 I'd saved over 40 years as a postal worker. That night, I watched my son Bradley and his wife Stephanie break into my house, steal my financial documents, and plan to empty my retirement accounts. They thought I was visiting my sister 3 hours away. Instead, I was recording everything from upstairs, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy their lives. You see, they made one critical mistake. They assumed a simple mailman couldn't outthink two college graduates drowning in debt. They forgot that quiet people often have the loudest connections, like my brother-in-law, Detective Samuel Brooks, who was already on his way. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from. Family betrayal hits different when it costs someone their future. Let me show you how 40 years of patience became their worst nightmare. The first sign came during Sunday dinner in September. Bradley was cutting into Clara's famous pot roast recipe when he looked up and said, "Dad, we need to talk about your finances." I set down my fork. "What about them?" "You're sitting on over $500,000 while Stephanie and I are drowning." His voice had that edge I'd been hearing more often lately. "It's not fair." Stephanie nodded, scrolling through her phone. "Henry, we're family. Family shares resources." I'd saved $530,000 over 40 years of postal routes. Every dollar earned through 5 a.m. shifts, overtime during Christmas rushes, and skipping vacations so Clara could have her medical treatments. The number represented 14,600 days of work, $13,250 saved each year through discipline they'd never understand. "That money's for my retirement," I said quietly. Bradley laughed. "Dad, you live in a house worth $380,000 that's paid off. You drive a 12-year-old Honda. What do you need retirement money for?" What I needed it for was simple. Claire's cancer had already cost us $180,000 in treatments insurance wouldn't cover. I was 64 with arthritis in both knees and a pension that would barely cover property taxes. But explaining financial responsibility to someone with $95,000 in credit card debt felt like teaching calculus to kindergartners. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. I was at their house helping Bradley fix his deck when his neighbor Jim stopped by. "Your dad's got a nice setup," Jim said, nodding toward my Honda. "Simple living, smart savings." Bradley's face darkened. "Yeah, he's got it figured out. Sits on a fortune while his family struggles." Jim looked confused. "Struggles? Didn't you just get back from Vegas?" "That was for Stephanie's birthday." "And the new BMW in your driveway?" Bradley's jaw tightened. "We're not struggling for the reasons you think." A moment after Jim left, Bradley turned to me. "This is embarrassing, Dad. People think we're broke because you won't help family." But I'd seen the credit card statements he'd left on his kitchen counter. 38 different charges in September alone. Nordstrom, $12,200. Sports betting app, $3,400. Restaurants, $890. The pattern was clear. They weren't struggling because of circumstances. They were struggling because of choices. "Maybe people think you're broke because you spend like millionaires on a middle-class income," I said. Stephanie appeared in the doorway. "That's rich coming from someone who's never had to worry about keeping up appearances." "Keeping up with who?" "Everyone, Henry. We have a reputation to maintain." I looked around their house. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, furniture that cost more than I made in 6 months. "What reputation is that?" "Success," Bradley said. "Something you wouldn't understand." The words hit deeper than he'd intended. 40 years of delivering mail through snow, rain, and blazing heat. 40 years of being called just the mailman by people who couldn't balance a checkbook. 40 years of watching my son grow up thinking his father's work didn't matter. But what Bradley and Stephanie didn't know was that postal workers see everything. We know which houses have money troubles from the foreclosure notices. We know which families are solid from the steady flow of normal mail. And we know which neighbors are police officers, lawyers, and judges, because we deliver their paychecks. I'd spent 40 years building more than just savings. I'd built relationships with people who mattered, people they had no idea existed. That night, I called my brother-in-law, Samuel. He was Clara's younger brother and had been a detective with Metro Police for 18 years. Sam, I said, I need to ask you something about protecting assets from family members. His voice sharpened immediately. Henry, what's going on? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with 40 years of financial records spread in front of me. Bank statements dating back to 1983, investment portfolios, the deed to the house, Clara's medical bills, insurance policies, everything I'd worked for in one neat pile. The numbers told a story Bradley and Stephanie couldn't see, or didn't want to see. My postal pension would pay $2,100 per month, starting at 65. Social Security would add another $1,800. That's $3,900 monthly income against property taxes of $420, utilities averaging $180, and basic living expenses around $1,400. It sounded comfortable until you factored in the reality of aging. Healthcare costs for a single man my age averaged $480 per month and rising. Home maintenance on a 30-year-old house ran $200 monthly. Car insurance, gas, groceries, the list never ended. My $3,900 income would cover basic survival, but any major expense would drain savings fast. The $530,000 I'd accumulated wasn't wealth. It was security. Claire's final year had taught me what medical emergencies could cost. Her oncologist bills alone hit $85,000. Radiation treatments, $45,000. Medications insurance called experimental, $31,000. Hospital stays, $19,000. I'd watched our savings account drop by $15,000 per month during her treatment. Money that represented years of careful planning, gone in weeks. The only reason we hadn't lost everything was that I'd protected the retirement fund in a separate account Clara couldn't access during her confused periods on pain medication. Bradley and Stephanie saw dollar signs. I saw survival. But there was something else they didn't understand about my situation, something that made their demands even more dangerous. My house sat on property that had tripled in value over 20 years. The lot alone was worth $190,000 to developers who'd been calling monthly with offers. The house itself, while modest, occupied prime real estate in a neighborhood seeing rapid gentrification. Property taxes had already jumped from $180 monthly to $420 in just 3 years. City Council was discussing a revitalization assessment that could double them again. If I couldn't pay increased taxes, the city would seize the property for back payments. I'd seen it happen to 3 neighbors already. Without liquid savings, I'd be forced to sell and move. At 64, starting over in a rental market where basic apartments cost $200 monthly wasn't just impractical, it was financial suicide. Bradley and Stephanie's demands weren't just asking for money. They were asking me to give up any chance of aging with dignity. The irony was brutal. They wanted access to money they claimed was sitting unused so they could maintain a lifestyle that was destroying their future. Bradley's gambling had escalated from $200 weekend trips to $3,400 monthly losses. Stephanie's shopping addiction had moved from occasional splurges to daily purchases. Their combined debt service was consuming 65% of their income. They were drowning and wanted to use my life preserver as a pool float. But what really kept me awake at night wasn't the money. It was the pattern. Bradley had started asking for small loans 2 years earlier, $500 for car repairs, $800 for an unexpected bill, $1,500 for Stephanie's dental work. Each request came with promises of quick repayment and gratitude for family support. None of the loans were ever repaid. None of the promises kept. The requests had evolved into expectations, then demands. Now they were discussing the money as if it already belonged to them, as if 40 years of my labor was their inheritance to claim while I was still breathing. I'd seen this behavior before. Mrs. Patterson down the street had gone through it with her son 3 years ago. Started with small requests. ended with him forging her signature on a home equity loan. By the time she discovered it, he'd borrowed $85,000 against her house and disappeared. She lost everything. The Postal Service taught you to notice patterns. Missing mail often meant someone was intercepting checks. Changes in delivery patterns usually indicated changes in family circumstances, and people who felt entitled to take what wasn't theirs rarely stopped at asking politely. I had a choice to make: give them access to my accounts and hope they'd show restraint, or protect what I'd earned and face whatever consequences came next. The decision should have been simple. But Bradley was my only child, the son Clara and I had raised to understand right from wrong, the boy who used to help me sort mail in the garage, asking questions about responsibility and hard work. Somewhere along the way, that boy had become a man who thought his father's sacrifice was his personal bank account. That's when I decided to call attorney Patricia Morse. Patricia Morse had been the Caldwell family attorney for 15 years. She'd handled Clara's estate planning, my will updates, and the legal paperwork when we'd set up protected accounts after Clara's diagnosis. "Henry," she said when I called, "it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" "I need to discuss asset protection from family members." The pause told me she'd handled this before. "Can you come in Thursday morning?" Thursday arrived gray and cold. Patricia's office smelled like leather and coffee, walls lined with law books that had seen decades of family disputes. She was 55, sharp-eyed, with gray hair pulled back, and the kind of direct manner that made people uncomfortable when they were lying. "Tell me what's happening," she said. I explained Bradley and Stephanie's escalating demands, the debt, the entitlement, the way they talked about my money as if it was theirs. Patricia took notes without expression. "How much are we talking about?" $530,000, plus the house. She set down her pen. "Henry, that's not generational wealth. That's basic retirement security. Try explaining that to them. Have you considered what happens if you give them access?" I had. Every night for 3 weeks. They'll drain it within 2 years. Probably faster. Patricia opened a thick folder. "I've seen this pattern with adult children dozens of times. It starts with financial assistance and ends with elder financial abuse." The phrase hit like ice water. Abuse? Taking money from an elderly family member without consent is abuse, Henry, even if they're your children, especially if they're your children. She pulled out a legal document. "After Clara's diagnosis, we set up a revocable trust with specific protections. Your children can't access those funds while you're alive unless you specifically authorize transfers. They don't know about the trust." "Good. Let's keep it that way until we know their true intentions." Patricia explained the legal framework Clara and I had created. The trust held our major assets: house, savings, investments, protected from creditors, lawsuits, and family members who might challenge financial decisions during medical emergencies. "Clara was terrified that her medical bills would bankrupt you," Patricia said. "She insisted on ironclad protections." My throat tightened. Even dying, Clara had been trying to take care of me. "Here's what I recommend," Patricia continued. "Don't give them access to anything. If they escalate, document everything. And Henry?" She leaned forward. "If they attempt unauthorized access to your accounts or property, that's a felony." That evening, Bradley called. "Dad, we need to meet. Tonight." "About what?" "The money situation. It's getting serious." They arrived at 7 p.m. looking like they'd prepared for battle. Stephanie carried a folder. Bradley wore his serious business expression, the one he used when closing marketing deals. "Dad," Bradley began, "we've run the numbers." Stephanie opened her folder, spreading papers across my coffee table. Bank statements, property assessments, retirement calculations, my financial information printed from online sources. "How did you get these?" I asked. "It doesn't matter," Stephanie said. "What matters is that you're hoarding resources while family members are struggling." "Hoarding?" Bradley leaned forward. "You have $530,000 sitting in accounts earning nothing. We could invest that money properly, generate real returns, create wealth for the whole family." "Invest it how?" "Real estate opportunities. cryptocurrency, growth stocks. His voice was gaining energy, like a pitch he'd rehearsed. Dad, money sitting in savings accounts is actually losing value due to inflation. And money invested in gambling apps? His face reddened. That's completely different. How? Stephanie jumped in. Henry, we're not asking you to give us the money. We're asking you to share it. Family investment opportunities that benefit everyone. What kind of opportunities? She pulled out photos on her phone. This condo complex in Florida. Pre-construction prices, guaranteed returns of 15% annually. I'd seen those scams on the Postal Service fraud bulletin. Guaranteed returns were never guaranteed. Let me ask you something, I said quietly. If this investment is so good, why do you need my money? Why not use your own? The question hung in the air like smoke. Bradley's voice dropped. Because we don't have liquidity right now. You mean because you spent everything you had? Dad, that's not fair. Fair? I stood up, gathering their papers. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be you working 40 years before asking for handouts. Fair would be you saving money instead of spending mine. Stephanie's voice turned cold. We're trying to help you, Henry. This money could grow instead of sitting there doing nothing. Like your BMW payments are growing your wealth? That's for business. Whose business? You work in retail. Bradley slammed his hand on the table. Dad, stop being deliberately obtuse. We need this money, and you don't. I don't need retirement savings. You need some of it. Not all of it. The entitlement in his voice was breathtaking. How much do you think I should keep? Enough to be comfortable. 100,000, maybe 150. I stared at my son. You want me to give you 3/4 of my life savings. We want you to invest in family. No, I said quietly. You want me to fund your lifestyle. They left 15 minutes later, promising to give me time to think about it. But the way Bradley looked at me on the way out, calculating, frustrated, like I was an obstacle to be overcome, told me thinking time was over. That night, I called Detective Samuel Brooks again. Sam, how quickly can someone get access to another person's bank accounts if they have personal information? Why, Henry? What's happened? Nothing yet, but I think something's about to. The next morning brought developments that should have warned me. I found Bradley in my driveway at 7 a.m., looking under the hood of my Honda. What are you doing? Your engine's making noise, he said without looking up. Thought I'd check it out. My Honda ran perfectly. Had for 12 years. I didn't hear any noise. Trust me, Dad, I know cars. Then he spent 20 minutes poking around the engine compartment, asking questions about my maintenance schedule, when I'd last had work done, how much longer I planned to keep driving, questions that felt like he was inventory checking my assets. You know, Bradley said, closing the hood, Stephanie and I were talking. Maybe you should move closer to us. This neighborhood's getting rough. I looked around at the quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 30 years. Rough how? Crime's up. Break-ins, elderly people getting targeted. He wiped his hands on a rag. You're sitting here alone with valuable assets. That's risky. I can take care of myself. Can you? Dad, you're 64. If someone wanted to get in this house, steal your documents, access your accounts, he shrugged. Just something to think about. The conversation felt like a threat wrapped in concern. That afternoon, Detective Samuel Brooks stopped by. He was 42, 6 feet tall with graying temples, and the kind of steady presence that made people confess things they'd planned to deny. Henry, he said, settling into Clara's favorite chair, tell me more about this situation with Bradley. I explained the escalating demands, the financial pressure, Bradley's morning visit. Sam listened without interruption, taking notes in a small black notebook. How much do they know about your actual financial situation? Too much. They had bank statements yesterday that they shouldn't have been able to get. Any idea how? None. But they knew exact balances, account numbers. Sam's expression hardened. That suggests either unauthorized access or someone with legitimate access sharing information. Like who? Bank employee, family member with account access, someone who's seen your statements. He paused. Henry, do you have a safe in the house? Yes. Mosler double dial, installed in 1985. What's in it? Bond certificates, cash reserves, important documents. About 40,000 in emergency funds. Does Bradley know about the safe? I thought back through years of family gatherings, casual conversations. He helped me move it in when Claire and I bought it. He was 13. Sam wrote something down. Does he know the combination? No, only Claire and I knew it. Then I remembered. But he watched me open it a few times over the years. Recent times? Last time was probably 2 years ago when I was looking for insurance papers after Clara's diagnosis. Sam closed his notebook. Henry, I want you to do something for me. Change the combination. You think he'd try to? I think desperate people do desperate things. And Henry, people who feel entitled to money they haven't earned often believe taking it isn't stealing. That evening, I spent 2 hours with the Mosler manual, resetting the combination from Clara's birthday to a sequence only I would know. As I worked the mechanical dials, I thought about trust and family, and the distance between the son I'd raised and the man who'd looked under my Honda's hood like he was planning something. After dinner, I called Patricia Morse. Patricia, hypothetically, if someone tried to access accounts or property without authorization, what would the criminal charges be? Depends on the amount and method. Unauthorized access to bank accounts could be identity theft, fraud, or theft. Breaking into someone's home to steal documents or valuables could be burglary. Why? Just want to understand the legal landscape. Henry, are you in immediate danger? I looked out my front window at the quiet street, the house I'd called home for 3 decades, the mailbox I'd installed when Bradley was 8. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think I should find out. Patricia's voice was careful. What are you planning? Nothing yet, but if something happens, I want to be ready. Friday night changed everything. Bradley and Stephanie invited me to dinner at Romano's, the upscale Italian place where local business people conducted deals and families celebrated milestones, the kind of restaurant where appearances mattered and conversations carried to other tables. Our treat, Bradley had said. Family dinner. I should have known better. We were seated at a center table with clear sightlines to the bar area where several neighbors were having drinks. Jim Patterson from down the street, the Kowalskis from the corner house, Maria Santos, who ran the local real estate office. People who knew our family had watched Bradley grow up. Dad, Stephanie began after we'd ordered, we've been thinking about your situation. What situation? Bradley leaned forward, his voice pitched to Carrie. The money situation, how you're handling your assets. I'm handling them fine. Are you, though? Stephanie's tone was patient, condescending. Henry, you're sitting on over $500,000, while people who could really use that money are struggling. Her voice was loud enough that the Kowalskis glanced over. People like who? I kept my voice low, hoping to prevent a scene. People like your family, Bradley said. Dad, we love you, but hoarding money while your children can't get ahead isn't healthy. I'm not hoarding. What would you call it? Stephanie interrupted. You live like a monk while sitting on enormous wealth. That's not normal behavior. Maria Santos was now openly listening from 2 tables away. Bradley continued, his voice gaining volume and confidence. Dad, you're a postal worker. You don't understand investment strategies, portfolio management, wealth building. You're literally watching money lose value while people with actual financial knowledge could multiply it. The dismissal in his tone made my chest tighten. I understand saving money. Saving, yes. Growing wealth, no. He smiled condescendingly. There's a difference between stuffing cash in mattresses and actual financial planning. Stephanie nodded enthusiastically. Henry, we're trying to help you understand modern money management. You can't just sit on assets doing nothing. Nothing? My voice was quiet, controlled. I worked 40 years for that money. And that's admirable, Bradley said loudly. But now it's time to let people who understand finance make it work properly. Jim Patterson had turned completely around in his chair. People like who? I asked. People like us, Stephanie said. Bradley has connections with investment professionals, real estate developers, cryptocurrency experts. We could triple your money in 2 years. The Kowalskis were whispering to each other, watching our table. Triple it? How? Bradley's voice took on the tone he used with slow customers. Dad, you wouldn't understand the mechanisms. Complex financial instruments, leveraged investments, arbitrage opportunities. It's not mailman level thinking. The phrase hit the table like a physical blow. Mailman level thinking. I don't mean that as an insult, Bradley continued, oblivious to the damage he'd just done. You're good at what you do, showing up on time, following routes, delivering mail, simple, honest work. But wealth management requires different skills. Stephanie jumped in. What Bradley's saying is that you've done your part. You've saved the money. Now let people with education and experience grow it properly. People with education. Bradley has an MBA, Henry. I have a finance degree. We understand market dynamics, investment vehicles, wealth creation strategies. You understand mail delivery. Maria Santos had stopped pretending not to listen. She was staring directly at our table. So my opinion on my own money doesn't matter? I asked quietly. Of course it matters, Bradley said patronizingly, but it shouldn't override sound financial advice from qualified professionals. Like you. Like us. Dad, we're family. We want what's best for you. But sometimes what feels safe to someone without financial education isn't actually in their best interests. The restaurant had gone noticeably quieter. Other conversations had softened as people tuned into ours. Help me understand, I said carefully. You want access to my accounts so you can invest my money in opportunities I'm too uneducated to evaluate? Exactly, Stephanie beamed like I'd finally grasped a difficult concept. You focus on what you know, simple living, basic expenses. We'll handle the complex financial decisions. And in return? Bradley spread his hands. Everyone benefits. Your money grows, our situation improves, the family gets stronger financially. Your situation improves how? Management fees, he said casually, standard practice. When investment professionals handle portfolios, they charge percentage fees for their expertise. How much percentage? Industry standard is usually 8 to 12% annually. I did the math in my head. 12% of $530,000 was $63,600 per year, more than my postal pension. So you want me to pay you $60,000 annually to gamble with my retirement money? Bradley's face reddened. It's not gambling, Dad. It's sophisticated investment strategy. Like your sports betting app? That's completely different. How? Because this is a professional portfolio management, not recreational wagering. Stephanie's voice turned sharp. Henry, you're being deliberately difficult. We're offering to help you grow wealth, and you're acting like we're trying to steal from you. The word steal hung in the air. Several conversations had now stopped completely. Are you? I asked quietly. Are we what? Trying to steal from me. Bradley's voice rose to near shouting. Dad, that's insulting. We're trying to help you, and you're accusing us of theft. Every table in our section was now watching. Then why do you need my money to make these great investments? Why not use your own? The question silenced them both. Into that silence, Maria Santos stood up, walked over to our table, and said, Henry, is everything all right here? The cavalry had arrived, but it was about to get worse. The restaurant confrontation ended with Bradley and Stephanie storming out, leaving me to pay for dinner and face the stares of half the neighborhood. But as I drove home that Friday night, I realized their public humiliation had served a purpose beyond just embarrassing me. They'd announced to everyone within earshot that I was an obstacle to their financial plans. Saturday morning, I called my sister Helen in Columbus. Henry, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm good, Helen. Listen, would it be okay if I visited for a few days? I need to get away from some family drama. Of course. Come anytime. What's going on? Bradley and Stephanie are having money troubles. They're pressuring me to give them access to my savings. Helen's voice hardened. How much pressure? Enough that I think a cooling-off period might help. Drive carefully. I'll make up the guest room. What I didn't tell Helen was that I had no intention of driving to Columbus. Instead, I spent Saturday afternoon at Radio Shack, purchasing a Nest security camera system for $890. Professional installation wasn't necessary. 40 years of fixing things around the house had taught me to read instruction manuals carefully. The cameras were small, wireless, and nearly invisible when properly positioned. I installed one in the living room with a clear view of the Mosler safe built into the wall behind Clara's bookshelf, another in the hallway leading to my office, a third covering the back door, the system connected to my smartphone, recording continuously to cloud storage with motion-activated alerts. Sunday evening, I loaded a suitcase into my Honda and drove to Helen's neighborhood in Columbus. But instead of stopping at her house, I parked 3 blocks away and called her. Helen, I'm sorry, but I need to postpone the visit. Something came up. Is everything okay? I think so. I'll explain later. I drove back to Westfield Township, arriving home after midnight. Instead of entering through the front door, I used my key on the back entrance and went straight upstairs to the guest bedroom that overlooked the street. From there, I could see anyone approaching the house while remaining invisible myself. Monday morning, I called my office and requested emergency personal leave. Everything all right, Henry? My supervisor asked. Family situation. I need a few days to handle some personal business. Take what you need. You've got the time coming. That afternoon, Bradley called. Dad, we drove by the house. Your car's not in the driveway. I went to visit Helen in Columbus. Good. That's probably for the best. Let things cool down after Friday night. Probably. When are you coming back? Few days, maybe longer. Well, take your time. Stephanie and I will keep an eye on the house. The call ended, and I knew the trap was set. Tuesday passed quietly. Wednesday brought nothing but routine neighborhood sounds and postal workers delivering mail to other houses. Thursday, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the security app to see a dark sedan pulling into my driveway with headlights off. 2 figures emerged, Bradley and Stephanie, dressed in dark clothing, moving carefully toward the back door. My heart hammered as I watched my own son produce a key from his pocket. The spare key I'd given him years ago for emergencies, the one I'd forgotten to retrieve. The cameras captured everything in perfect digital clarity. Date stamp, November 16th, 11:52 p.m. Bradley inserting the key, Stephanie following him inside, carrying what looked like a duffel bag. They moved through the house like they'd planned this carefully. Stephanie went straight to the kitchen, searching through drawers where I kept financial papers. Bradley headed for the living room and Clara's bookshelf. The living room camera provided a perfect view as Bradley moved Clara's books aside, revealing the Mosler safe built into the wall. He stood there for several minutes, examining the dual combination dials. Can you figure it out? Stephanie's voice came clearly through the audio feed. Give me time. I watched him open it before. What if the combination's different? It won't be. Dad's not that smart. The casual contempt in his voice made my hands clench. For the next 20 minutes, I watched my son try combination after combination. His first attempts were Clara's birthday in various formats. Our anniversary, his own birthday, the house address. Nothing worked. Stephanie grew impatient. Just call the locksmith friend you mentioned. At midnight? That'll raise questions. Then break it open. It's a Mosler safe, Steph. These things are built like bank vaults. Bradley stepped back, studying the safe like a puzzle to solve. Then his face changed as understanding dawned. Wait, try my birthday backwards. 3 minutes later, the Mosler clicked open. The camera captured their expressions perfectly as they stared into the safe's contents. Stacks of bearer bonds, emergency cash reserves totaling $40,000, insurance papers, property deeds. Jesus Christ, Bradley whispered. Look at all this. Stephanie started pulling out documents, photographing everything with her phone. Bank routing numbers, account information, social security card. We can access everything with this. How much do you think is in the bonds? Has to be over 100,000, maybe 200. They worked methodically, photographing documents, counting cash, examining bond certificates by flashlight. The scene felt surreal, watching my own family ransack my most private possessions like professional thieves. But what chilled me most was their conversation. Once we have account access, we move fast, Stephanie said. Transfer everything to our joint account, then immediately into the investment opportunities. What about Dad? What about him? By the time he figures out what happened, The money will be legitimately invested in our names. He'll call the police. And tell them what? That his family made smart financial decisions with money he was too ignorant to manage properly? Bradley laughed. Besides, who are they going to believe? A confused old mailman? Or his educated son with MBA credentials? Exactly. We document everything, show them the investment agreements, prove we were acting in his best interests. Perfect. He gets angry, we get rich, and eventually he'll thank us. I'd heard enough. Time to end this. I crept downstairs, staying out of camera range, and positioned myself in the kitchen doorway. From there, I could see them clearly while remaining hidden in shadow. Bradley was stuffing bond certificates into Stephanie's duffel bag. She was copying information from bank statements into a notebook. "Excuse me," I said quietly. They both spun around, Bradley dropping a stack of bonds. Stephanie's flashlight beam hit me directly, and their faces went white with shock. "Dad!" Bradley's voice cracked like a teenager caught smoking. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I said calmly. "The question is, what are you doing in my safe at midnight?" The silence stretched for 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. "We can explain," Stephanie finally managed. "I'm listening." But the explanation never came, because at exactly 12:45 a.m., Detective Samuel Brooks stepped through the back door they'd left open. "Good evening, Bradley. Stephanie," his voice carried the authority of 18 years in law enforcement. "Henry called me about suspicious activity at his residence." The look on their faces was everything I'd imagined, and nothing I'd wanted to see. Detective Samuel Brooks stepped into the living room wearing his police uniform and the kind of expression that had broken down 1,000 suspects over the years. His badge caught the flashlight beam as he surveyed the scene, my safe hanging open, bond certificates scattered across the floor, Stephanie holding a duffel bag full of stolen documents. "Bradley, I need you to step away from the safe," Sam said calmly. "Stephanie, put the bag down and move to the couch." "Wait," Bradley stammered. "This isn't what it looks like." "What does it look like?" Sam asked, pulling out his notebook. "We're here helping Dad organize his financial documents." "At midnight, in the dark, without his knowledge," Stephanie found her voice. "Henry said we could access the safe. He gave us permission." Sam looked at me. "Henry, did you give them permission to enter your house and access your safe?" "No," I said quietly. "I told them I was visiting my sister in Columbus." "But the spare key," Bradley began, "was for emergencies," I finished, "not for midnight theft operations." Sam was writing everything down. "Bradley, how did you open the safe?" I remembered the combination." "From when?" "From watching Dad open it over the years." "So you've been planning this for some time." The statement hung in the air like an indictment. Stephanie tried a different approach. "Officer Brooks, we understand this looks bad, but we're Henry's family. We're concerned about his financial decisions." "What concerns?" "He's hoarding money instead of investing it properly. We were trying to help him organize his assets." Sam's expression didn't change. "By taking them?" "By evaluating them. Bradley has financial training." "What kind of training?" Bradley straightened slightly. "MBA from State University. 5 years experience in marketing and business development." "And that qualifies you to manage someone else's retirement funds without their consent?" "We weren't managing anything. We were just assessing the situation." I stepped forward. "Sam, let me show you what they were assessing." I picked up Stephanie's notebook from the coffee table. Page after page of account numbers, routing information, social security data, everything needed to access my financial accounts. "They weren't just looking," I said. "They were copying information for unauthorized access." Sam examined the notebook. "Stephanie, did you write this?" "I was just taking notes." "But notes on what?" "Financial information. For planning purposes." "Planning what, specifically?" The question caught her off guard. "Investment opportunities. Ways to grow Henry's assets." "Without his involvement." "With his eventual involvement, once he understood the benefits." Sam looked up from his notes. "So you were planning to access his accounts first, invest his money, then explain it to him afterward." "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is that simple." Sam's voice hardened. What you're describing is unauthorized access to financial accounts, which is identity theft. Taking someone's personal financial documents without permission is theft. Breaking into someone's home to commit these acts is burglary. Bradley's face went pale. We're family. Family members can't steal from each other. Yes, they can. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a felony. That's when my phone rang. I'd been expecting the call. Henry Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell, this is attorney Patricia Morse. Detective Brooks asked me to call you at this time. I put the call on speaker. Patricia, I'm here with Detective Brooks, Bradley, and Stephanie. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Caldwell, have you authorized anyone to access your financial accounts or remove documents from your safe? No, I have not. Are there currently people in your house who have accessed your safe without authorization? Yes. Are there documents missing from your safe? I looked at the duffel bag Stephanie had dropped. Bond certificates worth $85,000 were visible through the open zipper. Yes, bond certificates totaling approximately $85,000. Patricia's voice was crisp, professional. Detective Brooks, I'm prepared to file emergency protective orders to prevent further unauthorized access to Mr. Caldwell's property and financial accounts. Copy that, counselor. Bradley finally seemed to understand the gravity of his situation. Dad, wait. Let's talk about this reasonably. Reasonably? I asked. You broke into my house to steal my retirement money, and you want to discuss it reasonably? We weren't stealing. What would you call it? Stephanie jumped in. We call it intervention. Henry, you're making poor financial decisions. Someone needed to take action. Someone like you. Someone who understands money management. That's when Sam asked the question that destroyed their entire defense. Stephanie, what's your current credit score? She blinked. I don't see how that's relevant. Bradley, what about yours? Officer Brooks, our personal finances aren't the issue here. Actually, they are. You're claiming expertise in financial management while trying to access someone else's money. I think your own financial situation is extremely relevant. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of their credit card statements. Sam, their combined debt is $95,000. Credit scores below 600. They've missed payments on car loans, credit cards, and their mortgage. Stephanie's face went crimson. How do you know that? Because you left your statements on Bradley's kitchen counter when I was fixing his deck. The room fell silent as the truth settled in. Two people drowning in debt, trying to steal retirement money from a man who'd saved responsibly for 40 years. Sam closed his notebook. Bradley Caldwell, Stephanie Caldwell, you're both under arrest for attempted burglary, attempted theft, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. As he read them their rights, I thought about the boy who used to help me sort mail in the garage, asking questions about responsibility and hard work. That boy was gone. But maybe, just maybe, these consequences could help him find his way back. The next morning brought the kind of clarity that only comes after a storm passes. Detective Samuel Brooks arrived at 9 a.m. with paperwork and updates. Bradley and Stephanie had spent the night in county lockup, charged with attempted burglary in the first degree, attempted theft over $25,000, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. They're looking at serious time, Henry, Sam said, settling into Clara's chair with his coffee. First-degree burglary alone carries 2 to 8 years. Add the financial crimes, and we're talking about 10 to 15 years combined. What are they saying? Bradley's claiming he thought he had permission. Stephanie's trying to blame him, saying she was just following his lead. Sam shook his head. Neither story's holding up against the security footage. The footage. Crystal clear digital evidence of everything they'd done, said, and planned. Their voices discussing how to steal my money, move it to their accounts, and claim they were acting in my best interests. The prosecutor wants to meet with you this afternoon, Sam continued. This case is exactly what she's been looking for to send a message about elder financial abuse. What message? That family relationships don't protect you from felony charges. That targeting elderly relatives for their assets is predatory behavior with serious consequences. By noon, the story was spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire. Maria Santos had stopped by with a casserole and the latest gossip. Henry, I'm so sorry about Bradley and Stephanie. Everyone's talking about what happened at Romano's Friday night, And now with the arrest, she shook her head. People are shocked. What are they saying? That they can't believe your own son would try to steal your retirement money. Jim Patterson said he always thought Bradley seemed entitled, but this is beyond anything he imagined. The irony was bitter. Bradley had been so concerned about appearances, about what the neighbors thought of our family's financial situation. Now everyone knew exactly what kind of person he really was. That afternoon, I met with prosecutor Jennifer Walsh. She was 45, sharp-featured, with the kind of direct manner that suggested she'd built her career prosecuting difficult cases. "Mr. Caldwell," she began, "this is one of the clearest cases of attempted elder financial abuse I've seen in 10 years. The security footage, the documented planning, the actual theft in progress, it's textbook criminal behavior. What happens next? Trial, unless they accept plea agreements. Given the evidence, I expect that they'll plead guilty to reduced charges." Reduced how much? Depends on several factors. First-time offenders might see jail time reduced to probation and restitution. But Henry, I want you to understand something important. She leaned forward. This case isn't just about you. It's about every elderly person whose family members think that they're entitled to assets they didn't earn. Every parent who's worked 40 years to build security only to have children treat their savings like an inheritance to be claimed early. You're going to make an example of them. I'm going to make it clear that this behavior has consequences, real consequences. Wednesday brought more developments. Attorney Patricia Morse called with updates on the civil protection orders. "Henry, we've frozen all joint accounts Bradley might have access to. We've notified your bank, investment company, and insurance providers about the identity theft attempt. Your financial assets are completely protected." "What about restitution?" "That's interesting. Bradley and Stephanie's combined assets total approximately $12,000 after debts. Their house is underwater on the mortgage, their cars are financed, and their credit cards are maxed out. So even if they're ordered to pay restitution, they can't. They have no money to pay it with." The bitter irony was complete. They'd tried to steal my retirement money because they were broke. Now they were facing criminal charges and had even less than nothing. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been expecting from Bradley. "Dad, I need to talk to you." "About what?" "About making this go away. The charges, the legal situation. We can work this out as family." His voice still carried that entitled edge, like he was the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own destruction. "How do you propose we work it out?" "You drop the charges. We forget this happened. I promise we'll never ask you for money again." "Bradley, I didn't file the charges. The state did, based on evidence of your criminal behavior." "But you could ask them to drop it." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm your son. Because family forgives family." The audacity was breathtaking. "Family respects family, Bradley. Family doesn't break into each other's homes to steal retirement money. We weren't stealing." "Stop!" My voice carried 40 years of quiet authority. "Just stop. I watched the security footage. I heard what you said about me, about my money, about your plans. You called me too stupid to manage my own assets while plotting to steal them." Silence on the other end. "Bradley, you had every advantage I could give you. College education I paid for. Down payment help when you bought your house. Loan after loan that you never repaid. And instead of gratitude, you developed entitlement. Dad, instead of learning financial discipline, you decided my discipline was your inheritance. Instead of respecting the work that built our family's stability, you decided to steal it. I made mistakes. You made choices. And choices have consequences." Friday brought the plea hearing. Bradley and Stephanie, dressed in county jail orange, stood before Judge Patricia Morrison as their court-appointed attorneys read the charges. "Mr. Bradley Caldwell, how do you plead to attempted burglary in the first degree?" "Guilty, Your Honor." "Ms. Stephanie Caldwell, how do you plead to attempted theft over $25,000? "Guilty, Your Honor." The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, but the plea agreements were clear. Bradley would serve 18 months in county jail, followed by 3 years probation, mandatory financial counseling. Stephanie would serve 12 months jail time, 2 years probation, and community service. Both would be barred from contact with me for 5 years unless I specifically requested it. As they were led away in handcuffs, Bradley looked back at me one last time. The expression on his face wasn't remorse or understanding, it was resentment, like this was somehow unfair to him. That evening, I sat in Clara's chair with a cup of coffee and the local newspaper. The front page story read, "Local family members sentenced in elder abuse case." The article quoted Prosecutor Walsh. "This case demonstrates that no one is above the law, including family members who target elderly relatives for financial exploitation." It quoted Detective Brooks. "Mr. Caldwell's preparation and documentation prevented a significant financial crime and will help protect other seniors from similar exploitation." It quoted me. "40 years of hard work earned me the right to decide how my money gets used. That right doesn't transfer to children who haven't earned it." The phone rang, neighbors calling with support, friends from the Postal Service expressing shock, former colleagues sharing similar stories of family financial pressure. By 10 p.m., the calls had stopped. The house was quiet. For the first time in months, I felt safe in my own home. 6 months later, I received a letter from Bradley in county jail. The handwriting was the same careful script I remembered from his childhood homework. But the tone was different, humbler, more thoughtful. "Dad," it began, "I've had 6 months to think about what I did to you, to our family, and to myself." He wrote about the financial counseling sessions, the conversations with other inmates who'd made similar mistakes, the slow recognition of how his entitlement had poisoned his judgment. "I convinced myself that your money was somehow wasted because you weren't spending it the way I would spend it. I convinced myself that taking it would be helping you, helping the family, helping everyone except the person who'd actually earned it." The letter continued for 3 pages, acknowledging specific wrongs, accepting responsibility, asking for nothing. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I threw away when I chose greed over gratitude." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Clara's old recipe box with other important family documents. Time would tell if Bradley's recognition was real or temporary, but his words suggested someone beginning to understand the difference between entitlement and inheritance. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery where Clara was buried. Her headstone was simple granite with her name, dates, and the inscription she'd chosen: "She loved with wisdom." "Hey, Clara," I said, settling into the folding chair I brought for these visits. "Bradley's figuring some things out, slowly but maybe genuinely." I told her about the letter, about the plea hearings, about the quiet satisfaction of watching justice work properly, about the neighbors who'd rallied around me, the Postal Service colleagues who'd shared similar stories, the sense of community that had emerged from the crisis. "You know what I learned through all this?" I said to her headstone. 40 years of quiet preparation wasn't just about saving money. It was about building relationships with good people, understanding legal protections, having the patience to let consequences teach lessons I couldn't teach with words. A soft breeze moved through the trees above her grave. "I think Bradley might actually become the man we hoped he'd be. Just took some harder lessons than we expected." Driving home, I thought about second chances and earned forgiveness, about the difference between punishment and consequences, about the long work of rebuilding trust that may or may not ever be completed. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Sam Brooks. "Henry, how are you holding up?" I typed back, "Good. Learning that setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary." Wise man. Clara would be proud. That evening, I sat in my quiet house with 40 years of financial records spread across the kitchen table, not to protect them from theft this time, but to plan for a future that finally felt secure again. If you're watching this story, thank you for listening. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with loud words or dramatic gestures, but with quiet preparation and the patience to let actions speak louder than arguments. And if you're dealing with family members who confuse your assets with their inheritance, remember this: boundaries aren't walls, they're foundations. They're what make healthy relationships possible. Please subscribe if this story resonated with you, and let me know where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference.